Well, good morning. I want to talk today about kids and how difficult it is to have kids. And I want to talk to the parents, but I also want to talk to the church because our church has a lot of kids. And we put a lot of energy and resources. There's like 9,000, there's probably more people running King's Kids Summer Club than are in this room right now. Maybe. I haven't done the math. But we put a lot into kids at our church. And we have a lot of kids, so whether you're a parent or not, but especially if you're a parent, this one is for you. And the lie, since our sermon series is the lies that we live, is that kids are terrible. Kids are bad. Kids are not good to have. And it's an easy lie for any person who's a parent or any person who goes to a church with a bunch of kids to believe at certain points, if you're at all honest with yourself, because it is hard having kids. Kids are difficult. And I could name all kinds of reasons why that's true, but let me just name three. So number one, kids expose your sin. Kids don't have a filter. They tend to be honest about things that you learned how to lie about a long time ago. And they can, even just kids growing up and becoming adults, becoming teenagers, becoming young men and women. It can be like, oh, I always thought that family was pretty great, but now I see what kind of kids they have. And now I see how their kids are turning out. And man, they were able to kind of pull the wool over our eyes for a while, but now we see that they can't pull the wool over our eyes, right? Kids expose our sin. Jake and I's old pastor liked to tell the story of when he was a young man and he was married to his wife and they had their first daughter. I think she was about 5 years old, and they had either his parents or her parents over for family dinner. And they were having a nice dinner with the in-laws or whatever. And suddenly the little girl says, will somebody pass the blankety blank salt? And she didn't say blankety blank. She said like the worst one. Just imagine the worst word that you could put there. And it was that one, right? And that was how they realized, oh, we should wash our potty mouths, right? We should not curse as much around the house, right? Kids have a way of doing that. They have a way of just like acting like something that you can kind of negotiate and pretend like, and you know when to do it and when not to do it and how to hide. They don't have any of that. They expose our sin and they exacerbate our sin. If anybody knows that word, they make it worse, right? If you're an angry person, if you're a person that finds comfort in alcohol, if you name the sin, it never gets better because you have kids. I mean, maybe it does, like we'll get to that. But you know what I'm saying when I say like the tensions and everything of having kids, they can just feel like they're making it worse. So that's number one reason why it's hard to have kids. Number two would be, because kids are just difficult. They take time, they take energy, they take money, they take resources, they take emotional engagement. It costs a lot to have a kid. And as soon as you have a kid, you're vulnerable to that kid. You're weak to that kid. The kid is vulnerable to you, but you're also vulnerable. If you're not a weirdo, you love your kid and you want them to succeed and you want them to do well and you want them to marry somebody great and you want them to have a good career and you want them to not get hurt or have a medical condition. And you're vulnerable to all that. You have to trust God in a new way, in a way that you didn't have to. And of course, you have to spend your money, you have to spend your time. You can't just be, I'm sure some of you have seen like the I don't know if they still do these, but the Dink videos, dual income, no kids. People make like TikToks or whatever where it's like two childless people and they're like, We're waking up on Sunday. We're going to brunch at 11 a.m. We're going to drink mimosas, all the mimosas we want. The mimosas will have alcohol. Maybe mimosas always have alcohol. It's great because we don't have kids. And then, the conservatives will be like, you're going to be lonely when you're 90. And they're like, well, but we're 30 now. It's pretty nice. And, it is, I guess. If you like that sort of thing, if you like mimosas, right? In many ways, to be a woman, even if you don't have kids, is to be vulnerable to everything that comes with having kids. I mean, at least once a month, you're going to be vulnerable to your body doing something that's not very fun because you were made as a life giver, right? And as soon as you're pregnant, you're like sick, you could die, right? In the 21st century, people still die of pregnancy-related complications sometimes. Like having kids immediately, the second you get pregnant, it's like you're open to a whole world of vulnerabilities, of emotions, of all kinds of things, right? And then, so having kids exposes your sin. Having kids is just hard and requires a lot and makes you vulnerable to all kinds of things. Number 3, our world oftentimes isn't very kind to kids and to people who have kids. We have abortion, where we kill a lot of kids. We have, the dinks and the people that just don't like. Our culture is not really all that friendly to people who have kids often. Made the mistake of taking my family to a restaurant that someone in this room recommended that I'd never been to. And we walked in and we watched the lady, the hostess, clock us, and like her whole face fell. Like, oh no. There's a couple with 3 screaming brats. Whatever shall I do to keep peace at the restaurant? And it was like early, and there weren't the tables weren't filled up or anything. But she came over, and she was very nice, and she led us upstairs, past a bunch of empty tables, and all the way into the corner where we were out of the way, right? And it was just like we knew what she was doing. She knew what we would do. It was just like, okay. No expectation on her part that we would be capable of maintaining any kind of discipline or anything with our kids, and no expectation on our part that she should do anything but shove us in a corner. And in the corner that we got shoved into, there were other families with awful kids, so I guess she was right. I don't know. But it's one of those things where, even in fairly conservative blue state Evansville, you can find yourself. I can't go anywhere now that I have 3 kids and my wife is very obviously pregnant. People will say, you're outnumbered. Or they'll have some comment like that. Like anytime I get, and most of them are real friendly and real nice, but there's always some subtext of like, you know how that happens, don't you? Something bad happened to you, right? There's always a little bit of that. Every once in a while I get, man, what a blessing. Isn't that great? Isn't it wonderful that you have this wonderful family? We do get that, and it means a lot when we get that, usually from, 90-year-old couples. So it's difficult to have kids. And I think Christians have 2 kind of maybe equal and opposite bad responses that we have as people who, we know, I'm going to get into it later, but the Bible says kids are a blessing and we're supposed to love kids, and we understand that, right? We understand that it's not right to have a bad attitude about kids. But then we kind of have 2 ways that we negotiate that, living in the current climate that we do. Number 1 is we're just kind of worldly. We just kind of have the same cynical attitudes as worldlings do about kids, but we, paint it over with a little Christianness. We're a little nicer, but we still kind of, we still make all the jokes like, I don't know, whatever the jokes are. We still have a bad attitude about it. We are still cynical about it. We still are not happy with children, not comfortable with children, but we kind of pretend a little bit. But sometimes not even that much. And then I think the other sort of bad reaction that some people do is they frantically try and prove that they are not at all worldly. They love kids. Kids are the best. I have 14 kids. I spank all the 14 kids 3 times a day. That's 42 spankings a day. We're not vaccinated. It's wonderful. Yay, kids. Dresses for the girls. Not dresses for the boys. We like kids. Homeschool. Whatever. And all those things are fine. I'm not making fun of any of that stuff individually, but you know the type. And the thing about that is often those people burn out and then they just become the first person, because it's actually hard to lie and pretend like something that is hard is easy, and pretend like something that has real challenges doesn't, right? So how do we negotiate having children and loving children and raising children in the Lord in this world that we live in? The scriptures say that having kids is like a big blessing. No questions asked. It's just awesome, right? Let me read some scriptures. So Genesis 1:28, the very first chapter of the very first book of the Bible, God is blessing Adam and Eve, and God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." So the very first big command of God, the creation mandate, as theologians call it, is have kids, be fruitful, multiply. You should want to make more of yourself. Yay! And the Bible constantly, just incidentally, without even meaning to, so to speak, talks about kids as a blessing. An example would be Genesis 33:5. Jacob is talking to Esau, and he shows him the children whom God has graciously given your servant. The point of that passage isn't that God has been so gracious in giving Jacob kids. The point of that passage is something else, but that's just the kind of language that people use as they talk about children in the Bible. Like, yeah, of course, I've been blessed. I have kids. Psalm 127. This is a famous one, and Pastor Jake preached on this not too terribly long ago. "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward like arrows in the hands of a warrior, are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate." Children are a blessing. It just says it right there in black and white. Or what about, very precious passage, Mark 10:13. "And they were bringing children to him, to Jesus, that he might touch them. And the disciples rebuked them. But when Jesus saw it, he was indignant and said to them, 'Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it.' And he took them in his arms and blessed them, laying his hands on them." So there we see, that's pretty remarkable, because I think in the Reformed world that we come from, that our church is in, we make a lot of total depravity and the fact that people are born sinful. But Jesus is not above using children just as an example of innocence, of faith. Jesus is not like, total depravity. These kids are just as bad as you. Get them away from me. Or ask them to follow the same protocol as everyone else. He sees something kind of special about kids, right? And he uses them as an example of the kind of faith that we should have. So how do you put 2 and 2 together? What do you do when the Bible speaks so tenderly of kids, when it talks about them as just like a big blessing? And when we have a church that's investing so heavily in our children, we believe, kids are the future. That's a corny phrase, but it's true. And it's one of the reasons why our church works so hard to pour so much into our children. But what about me now? What about us now? What about things that really are hard about kids, things that don't feel like a reward? How do you thread the needle of all that? Well, I think that the answer is really simple, but it's also really complicated. It's as complicated as human nature, right? The answer is that in God's economy, there is no reward that doesn't come with responsibility. And there's no responsibility that doesn't come with a reward, right? So when you are given a big blessing by God, there's always a lot of work that comes with that blessing. And you always have to do that work to make the blessing be the blessing that it ought to be. So let me read a really famous parable that you're probably all mostly familiar with from Matthew 25, beginning in verse 14. This is Jesus speaking. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also, he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, obviously, that parable is a metaphor for not just the money that God has given us, but all the gifts that he's given us. And those gifts can really be anything. You know, you might have a special skill that you're good at. You're a doctor or a lawyer or a candlestick maker or something, and you're good at that, and you need to use that to glorify God. You might just have natural abilities, whether it's athletic abilities or charm or friendliness or charisma or even just physical attractiveness. You might be handsome or beautiful. And if whatever it is, whatever good thing, you might have lots of money, whatever good thing you have that God has given you, your responsibility is to use that good thing to serve him, to love him, to bring him glory. Right? I mean, I actually really think it would be useful for pretty people to think of it as a gift of God. A gift of God that's not, instead of being like, shucks, I'm not pretty, just acknowledge it. You didn't do anything to earn it, but you've got it. And you've got it for a little while. It's not going to last forever. And, it makes people more inclined to listen to what you have to say. It makes people want to spend time with you. So use that for good, one way or another. Whatever it is that God has given you, you have to use it for good. Okay? And that is children. Children are a reward They are a blessing, but they are a blessing that comes with responsibility. If you love them, if you discipline them, if you do the work, they will increasingly be a blessing to you. And I think Satan is very good at either getting us thinking of all the rewards that come with any kind of a blessing, and then when there's any kind of responsibility that comes with those rewards, we're shocked, and we're like, oh no, I have to work at this? That's like me going into marriage, or any young man probably going into marriage. Yay, I'm going to be married. It's going to be great. There's going to be a lady. We're going to be in the same bed. It's going to be good. And then it's like, oh, I have to be emotionally available to her all the time. There's responsibility that comes with the reward, but all I'm thinking about is the reward, and then I'm shocked by the responsibility. I think oftentimes with kids, we can be thinking so much about the reward that we're shocked when there's responsibility, or we can do the really worldly thing and just make much of the responsibility. Just think about how terrible it is. Just think like the bad man in the parable, that our master's mean, that he doesn't want to give us good things, that he won't bless us, that it's just going to be hard, and not have a vision for the rewards. And the fact is, if you love kids, if you discipline kids, if you put in the work, they are and can be a joy to you. They can be a lot of fun. And I really hate to say this, but mine are. I like my kids, and I'm not like super sentimental about like kids or anything like that, but I just enjoy my kids, and and they're fun, and they're fairly obedient. I mean, they can be bad. And it's not because I'm so wonderful. It's not because I'm so godly. It's not because I've done everything right. We've done a lot of things terribly wrong. We've gotten a lot of things so wrong in the way we've managed our house and the relationship between me and my wife and the ways that we've treated our kids. There's many, many sins that we've committed, many, many mistakes that we've made. But by God's grace, we've always kind of had a vision that if we love our kids, if we discipline them, if we do the work, God will, if we expect them to be a joy to us, then God will bless that. And by and large, in a big picture kind of a way, he does. I think many people think that they deserve the reward without the responsibility. And that's just Marxism, right? That's just the demonic doctrine of Marxism. That's just everything should be easy for me. Well, that's not how God made the world. We need to see that everything good that God gives us comes with work and responsibility and things that we need to do to manage it well. Reward and responsibility are always linked in God's economy. So, how do you re-engage or engage for the first time with the responsibility in order to get the reward? I'm glad you asked. Number one, we once again, we shouldn't romanticize too much the reward that is children. I mean, children are so much fun. They're delightful. I love them. They are a blessing. But I think we do need to acknowledge what's difficult about it. We do need to be able to actually be honest about that with ourselves, with other people, ask for prayer, ask for guidance, get advice when things aren't going the way that we hoped it would. Because kids are work. Kids are a lot of work. And part of the curse of living under Adam, right? Part of the curse that happened when Adam and Eve ate the fruit is that work became more difficult. And specifically, the work of childbearing for Eve became more difficult. And I don't think God was just cursing Eve with pangs in labor. I think the whole business of children is more difficult, obviously, than it would have been without sin, without judgment, without God's discipline of us. And so we shouldn't romanticize about any of that. We shouldn't we shouldn't act like we're still in Eden, like everything is still just wonderful. We need to be honest. I think that's the first thing. But the second thing that I would say is the work of having kids for this church and for individual parents is hard, but it feels harder, I think, than it has to, because many of us just give up, myself included, all the time. Many of us give up way too soon. We give up way too soon. The great Catholic writer, G.K. Chesterton, has a quote that I like. "The Christian ideal has not been tried and found difficult. It has been found difficult and left untried." Everybody got that? It's kind of a complicated wordplay thing. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found difficult. It has been found difficult and left untried. So, in other words, it's not so much that people are like, yay, I want to obey Jesus. And then they work really hard to obey Jesus and they find out that it's difficult. And then they give up. It's more like they're like, wow, obeying Jesus seems really hard. And then they never do it in the first place. And he wasn't talking specifically about child rearing, about the work of loving and disciplining our children. But I think it is very true that that dynamic plays out in certainly how I approach my kids. Because I will be like, this kid needs some more love, or this kid needs more consistent discipline. And then I'll do it for a day. And then, the kid won't immediately change or turn around or be different. There won't be immediate fruit. And I'll get really discouraged. Like, man, oh man, I spent the entire afternoon with Theo. Her behavior should be perfect. What's going on? And I think without ever saying this to myself, without putting it this way, I often just kind of give up because I don't see immediate fruit from the work of love, from the work of discipline. I used to have a men's group. I don't know if anybody's in here that was in that men's group. I don't think they are. But a few years ago, we had a men's group that I was part of, and there was this joke that we had because somebody was having issues with their small child. And I said, when I have issues with Theo, I just take her to Barnes & Noble and we ride the escalator up and down. And she loves to ride the escalator. And then, inevitably, she's really well behaved after that because her love tank is filled up and it's great. So this person, actually, I think two separate people from the men's group were like, that's a great idea. I respect Nathan and his ideas so much. I'm going to go do that. And so they literally, I think, took their kids and they rode the escalator for a while or did something similar to that. And then, lo and behold, their kids were still brats. And they came back to men's group a week or two later and they were like, your escalator trick, not quite as magical as you said it was, Nathan. And, it's entirely possible. I remember myself doing it perfectly, but it's entirely possible I oversold the escalator trick. Just spend a few hours with your child and everything, they will feel loved and everything will be perfect. I might have actually oversold it. But I also think if their genuine expectation was, I can just do this once and then problem solved, that's not really realistic, right? This really goes for any kind of sanctification, for any kind of work that God's given us, but I think it goes especially for kids. We need to obey consistently over a long period of time to see the fruit. It doesn't always come immediately. And so you'll get good advice like, we need to discipline consistently, or I need to fill up my kids' love tank. I need to make sure that they feel loved, that they feel attached, all that. You'll get those kinds of pieces of advice. And it's like, you can't just do them for a week. You can't just do them for a month. You can't just do them for half a year. You have to actually dedicate yourself to knowing that these are the right things to do, that they are the things that God commands, and then you're just going to do it no matter what. And then I think that's when you will see the fruit. I've actually had this exact conversation with my wife where I'm just like, man, oh man, we've been trying to crack down on this or that. And, I'm disciplining every time for that thing. And they're not changing. Why isn't she changed? What's the problem? And my wife says, Nathan, you've been doing it for half a day. And you were gone for a week before that. You were out of town. You think we like to use the metaphor in our family of sleep debt. I think I said this in a previous sermon. But if anybody's familiar with the concept of sleep debt, if you sleep, let's say for 3 nights for just 4 hours, and then, so you do that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then on Thursday, you get 8 hours, your body does not biologically reset to normal just because you got one good sleep. Actually, what you really have to do is get enough sleep to make up for, what you need to do is get 9 hours for the next 3 weeks so that you can pay back the debt. And that's not literally like 1-to-1 biologically true, but it's basically true that we accumulate a sleep debt and that we have to pay it off at some point. We can't just reset. We have to actually pay back, put a little bit into the hole that we've made for ourselves. And I think that is often true in parenting. Certainly it's true in my parenting of my kids. I can't just be like, well, now I'm going to be consistent and disciplined. Now I'm going to love my kids. Now we're going to do devotions or whatever, and then do it for a little bit. And then everything suddenly is perfect. It's like, no, I actually have to sort of pour back into all the times that I didn't do it, which I guess could sound awfully depressing if you've got a big, discipline debt, a big love debt, whatever. But it's not that you have to one for one, do as much as, make the math work out. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, give it some time. I think oftentimes what I've personally observed from people that we counsel with or that we give advice about parenting especially is that they just want quick fixes. They just want to be able to do something and have it work and not have to worry. And it's like, whatever it is, whether it's like sleep training a toddler or, potty training or grade school stuff or, interacting with your surly teenager and figuring out how to love them. These things take time. They are projects that we undertake that go across whole stages of life. And I think rather than being depressed by that, we should just realize that that's true. And so you can take any given moment a little less seriously, actually. Like, okay, we're having a bad day. Or, okay, the quick fix did not immediately pay off. That's fine. We are in this for the long haul. And so we are going to obey and do the things that we ought to do over time. We are going to believe God when he says, love your children. Don't exasperate them. We're going to believe God when he says, discipline your children. Be consistent. We're going to get great advice from people in the church. We're going to talk to people whose children we admire, whose families we admire. We're going to figure out what they did, and we're just going to do it. And, we're not going to worry about whether there's some kind of an immediate payoff. I think in kids and in not kids, in the work of sanctification, in the work of discipline, in the work of obeying God, so much of what Satan does is he just says, well, there wasn't an immediate payoff, so give up. And we can't. We can't give up. We need to just be consistent. Keep doing it. And we need to have a vision for kids being a blessing and kids being fun. If your kids aren't fun, you don't like them, then talk to us. Talk to Jake and Amanda. They have 9 kids. 9? 8. 8, yeah. They have 8 kids. Their kids are pretty fun, except for one of them. No, just kidding. They like their kids, I think, for the most part. Yeah, I see them being all gushy in the back. They love their kids, except for Abe. No, just kidding. Your kids can be a joy. I like my kids. I think they're fun. Theo came up to me the other day and started talking about the Roman Empire. She's 5. I was like, how do you know about the Roman Empire? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, where did you learn about, Theo, what even is? Can you tell me what the Roman Empire is? What's the Roman Empire? Or what's an empire? And she says, I kid you not, she says, you know what an empire is, Daddy? It's got fangs. It drinks people's blood. It wears a cape. I'm like, where did you learn what a vampire is also? I'm just kidding. I know where she learned what a vampire is. The other cute, I'll just tell one more cute kid story because I like my kids, even though it's got nothing to do with anything. The Lion King has Jeremy Irons plays the part of Scar, and they really love his song "Be Prepared," and so they ask Alexa to play the song "Be Prepared" all the time, and Alexa always says "Be Prepared," sung by Jeremy Irons. And so my kids, for whatever reason, have really locked on to Jeremy Irons as a thing, and somehow it's kind of turned into their curse word, I guess. Like they'll stub their toe and they'll be like, Jeremy Irons! And actually our whole family has done a pretty good job, unlike our old pastor, we've done a pretty good job of stop, like now when I stub my toe or something happen, the taxes go up or something, I'll be like, Jeremy Irons! So that's not to say my family's cute and your family stinks. That's just to say, I think by God's grace, He gave me a lot of really good examples at a formative time in my life so that I could see, like, this can be done. This can be done. It can be good. It can be a blessing. And so I've just had the faith in a very sinful, like more sinful than you, believe me. I won't tell the stories, but really sinful way. I've had the faith to try, and God has blessed that. So that's what I want for everybody here. So, just think of one thing that you can do this week that you can be more consistent in. Maybe think of one place where you need to be more honest with yourself about something that's not working or something that you don't like, and you can talk to us, you can talk to somebody. We want kids to be a blessing. We believe they are a blessing, and we want everyone to have the tools that they need to make that true. And so we want to help you with that if you need help. So let's pray.